How to build a space station in Spaceflight Simulator. This tutorial will include the basics of docking, payloads, fairings, and how to connect payloads together in space. The first lesson is that you can't just make an entire space station and launch it into orbit in one whole piece. The weight of the space station would be too high and the spacecraft either won't lift off or will not get into orbit, leading to inevitable failure. Attempting a stunt like this will most likely result in this. Yeah, not that successful. Instead of launching the entire space station at once, we usually send parts of the space station into space and then connect them in orbit. These parts are called payloads, and we release them into space once we reach orbit. Here's a rocket that has a payload at the top. To get into orbit, pass the Kármán line, and then turn sideways to reach orbit. Don't worry if you run out of fuel, simply activate the next stage. Once you make an orbit around the planet, you need to make sure that you never go back into the atmosphere. Once you have a trajectory which is out of the atmosphere, you have reached into lower orbit. Now you have made an orbit, you need to make it as close to a circle as possible. This part is quite confusing, so listen up. To increase the size of a side of your orbit, you need to get to the side that is opposite to the one you want to increase. Then you need to face towards the side and use your engines. Once you have gotten an orbit, you can release the payload and it will circumnavigate the Earth. Now that we have a payload in space, let's see how to connect them in orbit. To connect two systems together, we use a part called the docking port. This port can be used to connect two separate bodies together. Here we have two separate rockets, and once I drive one of them into the other, they become one rocket. Now that they have docked, we can move both of them together. Now let's edit our payload and add docking ports. We can also add various other systems to the sides. Personally, I like adding either solar panels, docking systems, or nothing at all. To protect the payload, increase aerodynamics, and make the rocket look better, we use a part called a fairing. Here's a demo of a payload encased in a fairing. Oops. Now let's move on to the most important part of building a space station: connecting payloads in space. First of all, you want to get into an orbit that is around 100 kilometers in radius. Once you reach orbit, you can release your payload and let it be in orbit. I have made a blueprint which allows you to make a space station. Let's put it into orbit. Here's the spaceship. It includes 3 Hawk engines to get past the Kármán line, a second stage, which includes a Valiant engine for reaching orbit and encountering another payload. Then finally, the payload, which includes 1 large fuel tank with 2 probes and 4 CS thrusters for mobility. Let's add solar panels. Let's get into space. Now let's make an orbit. Our orbit needs to have a radius of 100 kilometers. Let's increase the radius. Now we can finally release the payload. There it is. Now clear the debris, since there are many parts which are floating in the orbit. Now that there is one payload in space, let's design a space station. Here is the blueprint for the rocket. It includes 3 payloads, 2 with solar panels and 1 with docking ports. We already have one of these payloads in space, so let's try launching the 2 others. Let's make the second payload. Now let's learn how to encounter the other payload. First, you need to select the other payload and click Navigate to. Then you will see 2 things. Number 1. Transfer window. The transfer window is the point in the orbit which allows the most efficient route to the other body. You can reach the transfer window by clicking on it and then clicking Warp to. Once you reach the point, you will get a number. This number is the number you need to change your velocity by to reach the other body. So in this case, you need to increase your velocity by approximately 66 meters per second. Try to get the number as close to 0 as possible by controlling your engines. Once you have gotten a value of 0, warp to a point that is close to the rendezvous. The rendezvous is the point in which both bodies are expected to encounter each other. When you get close to the other body, your distance and velocity values will be relative to the other body rather than the Earth. This is to make it easier to encounter the other rocket at a slow pace. Here you can see that the relative velocity between me and the other payload is approximately 60 meters per second, and the distance between me and the other payload is approximately 8,000 meters. I may have accidentally gone too far. Oops. So now I am 2,000 kilometers away from the other payload, and I'm reducing my speed so I don't crash into the other one or fly past it. Once you get close to the other rocket, you will see a side velocity value. This indicates how much of the total velocity is veering the spaceship to the side. Try to keep this as close to 0 as possible so you don't go away from the other payload. Once you are close to the other payload, zoom out and use your CS thrusters to maneuver the spaceship. Align the docking ports together to dock. I like to not eject the second stage from the payload until I am docked to the space station. This is so that I can use the excess fuel to refuel any fuel tanks that aren't at full capacity. There. Just like that, you are now docked in the orbit of the Earth. After refueling any parts that need it, you can eject the second stage and clear the debris. Finally, let's add the third section. This will be quick. Replace docking ports with solar panels. And there we are. In 4 minutes, we are back with another payload. Oops. Three, 2, 1. We're here. Refuel everything. And our mini space station is complete. I hope you enjoyed this mini tutorial. Bye bye.